11:30, we are going to start. Am I audible? Yes, I think now it's better. Okay, so good morning to all of you. I'm very delighted to open this session on solarization of healthcare facilities. My name is, excuse me. My name is Philippe Malbranche. I'm Additional Director General within ISA, the International Solar Alliance, which so far gathers 110 member countries. You see the flag there. Today, this session will address solarization of healthcare facility. I will give few words about the context, the overall context. You know that around 700 to 800 million of people around the world are lacking access to electricity, to power supply. And even more damageful, many people, between 1.5 and 2 billion people, are lacking access to clean, fresh water. So when you think about a healthcare facility, power and water are really critical element. It is especially an issue, a very strong issue in Africa, where so far 500 to 600 million of African people do not have access to clean electricity or power sources. So what about the healthcare sector? Solar is able to bring solution for many applications. And there's one major challenge for solar system is the upfront investment cost. So most of the time we have to address business models. So how to deal with that in the healthcare sector? What does it mean, healthcare center? It means health center, maternity, dispensaries, surgical blocks, medical warehouse, and testing labs. All of them so far are relying on intermittent or unstable power sources. So in that case, it's very difficult to cool vaccines, drugs, to power lights, to sterilize equipment, and it really endangers life. So we have to address this issue. I have also to say that lack of reliable power sources of variable voltage power sources make also some medical equipment very often fail. So one of the most effective solution to address this is to power this facility with solar power. Cost of solar have been decreasing a lot. It's now the most cost-effective way in off-grid situation to reduce reliance on fossil fuel, imported diesel fuel, and with an adequate battery, with an adequate backup power supply, you can provide power 24/7. So what has been ISA doing in this field? ISA has several programs, in fact 9 programs dealing with off-grid system, rooftop system, utility scale system. And we have launched an initiative which we have called ISA Cares to develop, to deploy solar energy in this sector. And this initiative aims at solarizing one primary health care sector in each member country. So far, we have started with Benin, Burkina Faso, Comoros, Fiji, Guyana, Mali, Mauritius, Niger, and Uganda. We have developed agreement with these countries to set up, to develop a first demonstration project on solarization of this healthcare facility. So with that, the purpose of this event is to look at the successes, the challenges of solar-based system to electrify healthcare centers. We have with us Pradeep Katakil, CEO of HIEX. We will have also a panel session, including people from CDRI, HIEX, Selco, KPMG, and Aptec, Aptec Uganda, to develop a better understanding of the challenges and opportunity in this sector. So with that, no further ado, I will hand over to Mr. Anand Tiwari, who is the CEO of HIEX. So, Anand Tiwari, the floor is yours. Mr. Tiwari doesn't seem to be here. Yes, Mr. Tiwari is online. So, can you hear us? You have the floor. We cannot hear you. I'm sorry, we can't hear you. English or French? English, yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Good morning, everybody. This is Anand from Geneva with Health Innovation Exchange. And Philip, thanks for introduction. And I think this is one of the important topics that we discussed about how solar can play important role in development of health system. And basically with the COVID, I'm not making any presentation here, and I'm going to talk about it. With COVID, one of the things which we have learned that we need a solid health resilient system. And without power, like we have seen like vaccines being donated from different countries, and they lost basically their efficacy in transportation, and because most of the vaccine needed like from Pfizer to Moderna minus 17 degree. And when we talk about Africa, like where there is not much power or continuous power supply in transit, you lose the efficacy of vaccine. And that's where we thought about basically electricity, and through the clean electricity through solar solutions can play important role in pandemic preparedness and also building up a strong health system. We have seen basically health infrastructure, electricity is a norm, and that is very important for any side, whether you talk about a surgery or you talk about transportation of a patient in emergency, or basically looking at running water, refrigeration, and basically all that things are key. Without power solution, we cannot take it forward and basically have a good solid system. We might have the best equipment, but without electricity, it doesn't work. And that's what we started an initiative with International Solar Alliance called ISA Cares. And we thought about looking at countries, looking at mapping of the countries, look at institutions like some of the public health dispensaries, which is the first point of contact of any patient, whether look at, still we have seen like in Africa, most of the country, still babies are born under the light of a phone, iPhone. Like you have an iPhone and your babies are born because there are no electricity or continuous power supply. And that's what we thought about. Building a good health system is very important. And we have sun, and Africa has at least 300 days of sun a year. But still we don't have a power, continuous power supply. We have a power, but there are breakdowns and all that. And we worked together, like Philip has mentioned about on countries where we worked about putting up solar panels on the rooftop of a dispensary or the hospital to have the continuous supply of power so that the normal facilities and even the big machines which are working, if they break down or there is a breakdown in the power continuous supply, the system goes collapse, and to restart those machines it takes huge amount of time and also the money. And if you have seen, like most of the machines are lying idle and like it doesn't work because there's no continuous supply. So I think this initiative we can take a long way and forward. And also looking at when we are launching in G20 a pandemic preparedness fund, I think solar has a major role to play about it, because without that, if we don't have power, we don't sustain the health system. And how can we prepare the pandemic, whether you need a data or monitoring or supplying of a medicine? Like Center X has medicine for malaria, Center Y needs malaria vaccine, but they has a tuberculosis medicine. So basically, we don't know where are the extra excess stock and how to transport that. So all this thing, I think, is very important. And I don't want to take much of time. I think ISA Care is a great initiative, and we need to look at scaling it up and also actually showing the impact of it, which is very important when we talk about basically the impact capital that is in the market for amount to $500 billion. I think it's very important to use those capital for a resilient health system powered through solar. And that is the thing, a key for the future pandemic preparedness. So that's what I want to say. And thanks a lot. And I'm happy to answer any more questions on that. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your introductory remark. Now I will hand over to Saurabh Gupta. I'm not sure he's online.
Good morning and good afternoon to all. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. So I'm just sharing
Mr. Saurabh Gupta, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. Is that visible?
And you can see your screen.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending upon the location you are joining from. A very heartwarming good morning and good afternoon to all. Today I'll be presenting on solarizing healthcare in South Asia. I am Saurabh Gupta, partner with KPMG, and this study we are undertaking with Asian Development Bank in association with International Solar Alliance. The broad objective of this study is to understand what are the ways we can strengthen our primary healthcare centers through solar. What is the broad potential which exists for solarization of healthcare systems in South Asia? What are the investment requirements? And what could be the possible business models to harness this potential? And more importantly, how solar helps to achieve the health outcomes, which is the most important aspect for any health sector, and how solar can help in achieving that. This is an ongoing study, and the results of that would be available early next year. But we thought to present the broad findings and the framework that we are following. So the agenda for today would include the emerging trends which are impacting the health outcomes. What are the key developments which are happening, and why we need to be cognizant of that from a healthcare perspective. The second most important aspect is the health profile in South Asia. While a lot of initiatives have been undertaken, there's still a journey left for the South Asia to achieve the way the high-income countries are doing on the healthcare parameters. Then third most important point that I would be covering in my presentation today is on how we can strengthen the primary healthcare system across these countries, what are the gaps that needs to be addressed. And the fourth point is how solar can play an important role in this entire journey. So the first point is the emerging mega trends. There are certain global trends which are impacting the health outcomes in South Asia, and we need to be cognizant of that. I think to start with, the first one is on the climate change. I think we are very well aware that how climate change is impacting the health sector. And I think over the years now, the impact of climate change is becoming more pronounced from a healthcare perspective. What we have seen that there are studies which are available which says that with a 1 degree centigrade rise in temperature, probability of respiratory illnesses increase significantly. There are past evidences as well. We have seen that with a significant rainfall in 2019, there was an unprecedented dengue outbreak in Bhutan, in Maldives, and there have been a tremendous increase and burden on the healthcare system. And then their linkage with the food security, which impacts the nutritional status, and again, circling back to the health sector. The second most important factor, which we all are aware of, is the COVID-19 pandemic, which has already, which has put an extra burden on the overburdened healthcare infrastructure of different countries. And what we have seen in this pandemic is that not only the limitation in terms of the medical practitioners, but we have seen that even the basic services were not available during the time of pandemic, and it impacted the entire programs of immunization, family planning, maternal, child health, and so on and so forth. The third most important trend, I think, which is also becoming more pronounced over the years, is the geopolitical development. We have seen how the energy prices have increased in the last 1 year. It has almost like doubled in most of the countries. Everyone has taken a significant price hike. So this clearly highlights that the fuel subsidies in all of these countries are increasing, and it will leave a limited fiscal space for the countries to spend on the health facilities as well. So it becomes important that we become cognizant of these impacts. So moving on, after the emerging trend, we need to be cognizant on what has been done in the South Asian countries. We know that great improvements have been done in the healthcare segment, but if we compare it with the global benchmarks, there's still a significant distance that needs to be covered for ensuring universal health coverage and a good health and well-being for all. So I think the two graphs on the left-hand side has shown the progress in the South Asian countries. We have seen that in the last 30 years, there have been improvement on multiple factors, and some of them we have tried to lay down here, whether it is life expectancy, whether it is the infant mortality rate, whether it is the maternal mortality rate, neonatal mortality, and all have shown a significant improvement across the South Asian countries. However, if you look at the ambition of these countries, the expectation of the people and the citizens of these countries, there is an expectation to achieve where the high income countries stand, where the global expectations, the global benchmarks are there, and there's a clear expectations to achieve at the standards of that. So we can see that there are a number of actions which are required to reach at these global standards. Also, when we reach there, I think financing, as has been highlighted, is an important factor. And I think this graph is very important. If we look at it, I mean, barring Maldives and Bhutan, in South Asian countries, we have seen that it's the out-of-pocket expenditure, which means that the population is spending significantly on the healthcare vis-a-vis the government. And if you look at on the right-hand side of the diagram from a high-income perspective, we see that it's the government which are spending significantly. If you look at the overall global spending, it has reached 9.8% of global GDP, and the bulk of this is coming from the high-income countries, which is spending significantly on the healthcare. Just to give an example, in the South Asian region, the per capita expenditure on healthcare would be somewhere around 200-250 USD, compared to high-income countries where the expenditure would be above $5,000 on a per capita basis. So it becomes important. I mean, financing becomes important for the countries. So sustaining progress towards health outcomes require both public funding, revenues, and effectively spending them. So we have a capital constrained environment. So we need to be more efficient in terms of spending our budgets on healthcare services. Now I move on to the next part of my presentation on what are the issues, how we can strengthen the primary healthcare. We know that it is the foundation of any health system. A robust public healthcare will form the cornerstone for achieving universal health coverage and other health-related target for South Asian countries. I think if we look at this diagram, I think it covers most of the aspects which are required and how access to modern energy services can play a key role in strengthening of the primary healthcare centers. We know that some of the gaps exist around the physical infrastructure. I think access to reliable power, water, communication services are all important from an energy standpoint. And what we have seen that while in the South Asian countries, the focus has been on providing grid power, but there are still centers which are unelectrified, especially on the primary healthcare side of things. And we have examples from different countries across the South Asian region. Then I think besides the access, even if we have the access, I think the utilization of services is a key factor if you look at it from a healthcare perspective. So irregular power supply impacts the utilization of services. Since the power is not 24/7 in most of these countries, it leads to a lower utilization. And we have seen again the utilization across healthcare facilities in the countries differs depending upon the power supply. And we have seen that even the geopolitical developments which have happened, it is leading to longer outages in the country, and it is impacting the health sector equally. Then I think so access is one point, reliability is second. The third is on the quality of services. And I think service availability is something which needs to be related with the quality of power. While we need to spend more, we need to create more equipments, provide more services at the primary healthcare centers. But the equipments that we already have are also impacted by the poor quality of services, poor quality of power, so to say, and it impacts the overall availability of the healthcare facility. So, and it has been found that poor quality of power supply is a major factor for equipment failures. The fourth important point is on the medical supplies. Most of the medical facilities, vaccines, and as been pointed by Mr. Tiwari as well, when it requires sub-zero kind of a temperatures, and cold storage becomes an important point. And we have seen that unavailability of that has significant outcomes on the immunization, the impacts it has on the spread of COVID vaccination. And the last important point is on the emergency response. While climate is a threat in certain ways, but climate also provides an opportunity in terms of the use of solar, the availability of solar at all the places. Poor accessibility to health facilities due to difficult topography in certain cases, like countries like Maldives, Bhutan, Nepal, there are topographies, there are difficult areas where the services cannot reach. And it becomes important that we look how we can create decentralized systems there, and the burden on the transport can be reduced to that extent, and how solar can play an important role. So just to summarize, we see that, I mean, even if we provide power, reliable power is indispensable for the healthcare operations. And we know that healthcare deals with protection of human lives. Reliable energy is absolutely critical for any government, for any healthcare sector to perform effectively, even if we create and provide adequate funding for creation of equipments. So moving on, I mean, now the question arises how, and this is the last part of my presentation. Now we just want to see that how solarization can address some of these gaps in the healthcare sector, and how it can effectively play an important role. If we look at the, I think the first row, it provides the requirements that needs to be met from a healthcare perspective. And the bottom right, the bottom row in the presentation reflects what are the opportunities which is provided by solar. While the requirement from a healthcare perspective, it's clearly established that the robust infrastructure is required, and we need a good access to electricity. We need increase in operating hours of these centers by ensuring reliability and quality power supply. And I think the important point to note is that if modern energy services are not there, I think it also impacts the living conditions of the medical practitioners and the workforce there. So power, modern energy is also one of the important factors in that. And I think solar can play an important role. If you look at it, solarization of healthcare centers through use of solar plus battery systems can help in resolving many of these issues. The another part is on the availability of essential medicine and vaccine. And I think if we now the significant investments are now being made on the on creating the cold storage services with the onset of the pandemic. I think if we from the start focus on solarizing it, that can go a long way in creating the solarization of cold storage systems across the world. And then I think the important point which can also be pondered on is on the timely emergency services. And we have noticed that significant part of the health expenditure also goes in the transportation part of it, especially when we looked in case of say Maldives. We have seen that the government expenditure, a significant is also towards the transport of the medicines of the healthcare services. So I think the ideas related to solar power boats, which have been piloted in various SIDS country, and that can be considered in different parts of the world. Then there could be decentralized system in terms of solar powered medical devices, portable maternity kits, and so on and so forth. So those are important ways where solar can play an important role and must be considered in strengthening the healthcare services across the countries. So as part of a study, beyond the creating the business case, we are also looking how we can implement solarization, and we are creating different packages, and that can help ISA and multinationals like multinational agencies like ADB and other agencies in sort of helping the governments with these packages. We are looking at specific use cases of solar and battery systems. So the one package could be solar in all unelectrified health centers where we can deploy off-grid solar systems. Then there are facilities, primary healthcare centers which are connected with the grid. They are electrified, but there are no backup services. And I think solar battery combination can help in providing that backup. Then there is a third set of primary healthcare sectors which are not only electrified but has DG as a backup. Again, we can move towards a more cleaner and a sustainable from a cost point of view, as we have seen that solar battery combination is now more cost effective versus the fossil fuel based generation. So we are working on these packages, and I think the broad approach that we are taking towards estimating this potential is understanding the number of primary healthcare centers which are there in each of these countries. What are the load? How we can do the load estimation, then use of technology mix to address the load potential, overall solarization potential, and also then looking at the business case, how we can harness this and implement on that. So operationalizing the solarization initiative will entail a systematic approach, starting with a detailed feasibility study at the time of deployment. So while we are looking at the broad potential assessment, a detailed feasibility side-by-side analysis would also be required as we move forward. So just summing up on my presentation, I would say that solar presents an opportunity, and with the fall in prices of solar battery costs, I think it provides a clear alternative to conventional electricity systems, and I think the business case is now more pressing than it would have been few years back. There are precedents which exist, and a lot of countries in their own ways have undertaken a lot of initiatives in solarization of the healthcare centers. Need of the hour now is to aggregate that demand, mobilize capital, and to implement it at a larger scale so that solarization can be done at a more accelerated pace and in a more cost efficient planned manner if we aggregate that. Also, ISA Care, I think, is a great initiative and complemented by the efforts of the multilateral organizations. I think it can play a key role in channelizing not only the financial resources, but also the technical know-how and the experiences of different countries. It has the ability to bring all of them together. And I think with the right coordination and implementation, solarizing initiatives can be replicated in different member countries of ISA, and a multiplier effect can be achieved. With this, I close my presentation, and thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Surab Gupta, for this very, very general overview. We will have the opportunity to go into more detail, and I will hand over to my colleague Tanaji Sen from CDRI India to moderate the panel discussion on opportunities and challenges in solarization of healthcare facilities. So, Tanaji, the floor is yours. I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malbonk. Pleasure. It's just the two of us, and I think all our colleagues have joined us online. I can see Mr. Tiwari is there, Mr. Hande is here, and I believe Laura will be joining us on the floor here. Thank you so much for those presentations. Very insightful and interesting. What essentially we're hearing is that solarization is a very key potential opportunity and pathway to delivering improved resilience of healthcare infrastructure and services, which will be critical to meeting global goals. And considering that we have experts here who have done extensive work on solar infrastructure and in the context of health infrastructure, I'm very delighted to actually take the discussion forward by inviting presentations from our colleagues. The first presenter who would be speaking on financial incentives or policy regulatory interventions for aggregating health centers or community development projects to enhance potential system size and generate multiple use cases is Mr. Pradeep Kakatil, the CEO of HiX. So over to you. I hope you could be able to hear the question. We have a lot of background noise here. Is Pradeep here?
Yes, hi.
No, is Pradeep not here? So then maybe I can ask the same question to you, Mr. Tiwari. No, there he is. I can see Pradeep now. Welcome, Pradeep. So we just wanted to hear about what needs to be done to incentivize policy and regulatory interventions to generate scale for solarization and solarization of health infrastructure.
Thank you very much, and sorry for joining late. My apologies. Had a health intervention that kept me from joining you on time. I think on the question of incentivization, I think fundamentally what we need to be able to do is to show the proof points. At this point, what is really scary for me is we have just come through one of the biggest pandemics that we have ever seen, right, with COVID. We have seen at least 500 million people being pushed into extreme poverty. We have at least 1 billion people, and this is, I would say, an underestimation. If you look at countries, between 50 to 70% of health infrastructure does not have access to electricity, forget stable electricity. So if we really want to demonstrate incentivization, it's really to demonstrate the health impact. That's number one. We need to be able to tell the story better, and which we have not been able to do sufficiently. Today, if you want to scale access to healthcare, and I believe that the next pandemic is just around the corner. So if we are not able to deliver access to electricity, one, we do not have resilient health systems. We will not be able to build that. We will not be having access to data on what's happening, because we need to be able to find the outbreaks before they really become an outbreak. You need to find it early, for which you need electricity, which will then help you to have the data systems in place. So for me, the incentivization, one is, can we demonstrate that this can be done on scale? India is probably one of the few countries where we have seen the large-scale implementation of solarization for healthcare. Can we look at what are the cost implications? What are the impact metrics? How do we measure that, both in terms of economic gains, economic opportunities created, health impact, and also, more importantly, let's not forget, we speak about climate and health often, but the most practical solution that we see, if you want to address the climate impact of health, apart from looking at all the medical waste and other things, health is one of the largest polluters. But if you look, all of us have seen the diesel generators that run in many of these clinics. Look at the pollution that's coming out. Can we actually put in numbers behind that? Once we can build a case, if we can build an investment case on scale, I think this is a no-brainer. Again, let's take beyond health. If you look at what is happening in humanitarian situations, the first thing that happens when you have an earthquake or a flood, any of those things, electricity is the first victim, right? Everything is off. Can we create new models for bringing electricity through solar into crisis situations? So we need to start thinking a little bit more from an impact perspective. We need to create those investment cases, and we need to start on scale. Sorry, that was a long answer to your question, but we need to have those models. We don't have those models sufficiently well articulated at this point.
Thank you. Hello? Yep. Thank you so much, Pradeep. That was very interesting. There's a lot of background noise here. So I'm going to catch what you said. I mean, what caught my attention was that we got to get the incentivization. We need to be able to show or say that this can work at scale. There are cost implications, but if you can show the impact metrics, the socioeconomic gains, and communicate that through data and numbers, we would be able to do what we are setting out to do. And importantly, I mean, solarization of health has twofold benefits which come out. One is that you actually provide access to power and water for health facilities and the surrounding communities. But the second is that they also provide a redundancy in case of a crisis, in case of a hazard event. So there is the socioeconomic, or there's the benefits case for it, but how do we make it economically also sustainable and viable? So that's very interesting. Thank you so much. I'm next going to move to Mr. Harish Hande, the CEO of Selco. So to you, Mr. Hande, I know Selco has done extensive work on solarization in India. What are the key challenges and gaps on other parts? Key challenges and gaps in the various categories of healthcare facilities, and how can solar contribute to strengthening healthcare segment? I mean, essentially, primary, secondary, tertiary, what are the different ways of solarization, and what are the benefits that accrue for these sort of differential modes of health service delivery? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. First, I think I'm not going to go over the benefits. Everybody knows about the benefits. So what has happened, sir, is that in the last 1 year, we've done around 3,000 health centers. And we've just launching it. I feel like, Miss, I was there in Cocktail yesterday, day before yesterday night, before heading back, and I was mostly at the WHO center. Selco just is launching with a couple of others, 25,000 health centers to be powered in the next 4 years. So we got the resources. We've allocated, it's all so 25,000. If a small organization of Selco can do it in the next 4 years, that's for 150 million people in India. So we're challenging governments that to the EU, to the USAID, that Selco will do. By 2026, it promises to deliver 25,000 health centers, approximately 150 million people. And the data we already have from the existing 3 to 3,500 systems that we have done in the Northeast. So we're basically implementing 25,000 in the next 4 years in India. We are actually doing Somalia, which is a bookend for us in a sense. How can you actually provide solar services to people in such terrains, which will give you what is the after sales maintenance that is required in countries like Somalia and Sudan versus the Northeast, like for example, Mizoram, Meghalaya, Manipur, because what by next year, sir, by this March, Meghalaya will be 100% solar, all health facilities. Meghalaya will be in December next year, 100% solar. Meghalaya and Manipur, 100% by December of 2023. The Mizoram will be 100% by 2024. So we basically, in all these places, the government is actually putting 40 to 50% of the resources. Meghalaya, we have done many of it where 60% has been provided by the government of Meghalaya, and we brought in 40% of the resources. So now for the 25,000 systems, we are actually having agreements with different governments where we are bringing in 50% of the resources, and the 50% is going to actually come from. So the time is over for analysis, actually. It's no longer, it's about implementation. And just to give you, sir, 12,000 systems is equivalent to the cost of what Parag Gupta got when he got fired from Twitter. So money exists. It is $45 million. And if 20 CEOs got fired, that it'll cover up India and Africa. So money exists. I think it's a question of time. It's a question of willpower, which is actually required. The total amount of losses that Uber made last year would cover Latin America, India, and Africa. So I think we've taken too much of time talking and analyzing. It's high time for implementation. We make it happen. And I myself I have promised in WHO in the COP, saying that if we don't do 5,000 by COP28, I will not attend COP28. So the question is, we promised 5,000 by next year COP, and subsequently 25,000 by 2026. And we are not a large, we are just 150 people. So the question is, I'm putting out a challenge to everybody. If willpower is there, by 2026, we should actually complete the world. So it is actually not a big thing. Thank you very much, sir.
Great, that's evocative and powerful. And what's interesting is what you're basically saying is that the only challenge is willpower.
Absolutely.
Determination to deliver.
That's it.
To get it done. And that's true. And at COP27 being in Egypt, and with the presidency saying it's time for solutions and action. Yeah. This should be the COP that converts all the commitments to action. So that's a great commitment and a call to action to all of us. Thank you so much, Mr. Hande. Now I'm going to move to Laura Corcoran, who's here with us. She's the Chief of Business Development with Aptech in Uganda. So what are the latest technological trends and government initiatives prevailing in solarization of health?
Okay. Thanks so much for having me today to speak. I hope you can hear me okay. Great. So Aptech Africa, we're an engineering, procurement, and construction company that is headquartered in Uganda, but is registered and have offices across 7 African countries, including South Sudan, Central African Republic, Sierra Leone, Niger, and then we're operating in DRC and Liberia from Sierra Leone and Uganda, respectively. Most of the bulk of the projects we've done are for UN agencies and NGOs, and we've done a lot with solarization of health. So I'm going to focus on the 4 countries where we've done the most project implementation. So starting with Uganda, Uganda is a very interesting market. About 15% of hospitals are solarized in Uganda, and Uganda's Ministry of Health and Ministry of Energy, they had the Rural Transformation Project 3, which provided solar for over 329 health centers. So it's a very big priority. Now, what we're seeing is, of course, these public institutions do not have the money to purchase the CapEx for solar. So what happens is a lot of these aid organizations, such as GIZ, such as UNDP, they come in and they provide that funding. In addition, for solarization of health centers, we're seeing that UNICEF is providing the bulk of the funding for vaccine storage, cold chain storage. They're having several large projects across these countries, which are enabling health centers to obtain these vaccine fridges. The Ministry of Health now in Uganda is offering subsidies to even private clinics to allow them to be able to access those the solar refrigerators. So there's a lot going on there. For ourselves, we've electrified 11 health centers, and we're getting ready to do another 12. And these contracts They're for hybrid systems, and they include at least 3 years of operation and maintenance. Another country that we're operating in is South Sudan. It has one of the lowest electrification rates in Africa, 7%. And most of that is in Juba, the capital. So that means if you're looking at health centers anywhere outside the capital, nobody has electrification at all. So UNDP has done a lot to provide solarization for some of those rural health centers. And because of COVID, UNICEF and the World Bank have teamed up to do a provision of essential health service project, and that's bringing cold chain storage to health centers in South Sudan. Central African Republic, another country with a pretty low electrification rate, 14% as of now, and that's basically only in the capital Bangui. So this means that most of the rural areas in Central African Republic simply do not have any access to electricity. The Green Climate Fund and the World Bank are teaming up. They're trying to unlock about $7 million of capital that will go towards electrifying 300 health centers in Central African Republic. So we hope that that initiative is coming up and we'll be able to access that. In Sierra Leone, again, the government is pushing for solarization there. Sierra Leone has an electrification rate of about 26%. 43% of their hospitals use solar and 30% of their health facilities. So in Sierra Leone, there's a lot of load shedding. So as you guys know, in the health sector, you need to have an uninterrupted power supply. If you are having an operation in an operation theater, you do not want the power to be interrupted. It's critical. It's a matter of life and death. So that's why these health centers, there's such a higher electrification rate with solar in these countries. Sierra Leone also is supported by entities like Power Africa that is trying to pilot innovative business models for solarization within Sierra Leone. So they have those initiatives going as well. As far as technology, there are a number of NGOs out there that have developed these inexpensive solar systems that are designed for off-grid. Most of these solutions focus on communication and lighting, and they're mostly for maternal health, and they're mostly for emergency services. So the NGOs are trying to come up with technology that can be easily deployed in these health centers. In addition, most mid-size or smaller health centers, they can really benefit from hybrid solutions. So when we look at electrifying a health center, we don't usually do it with just solar, and there's a number of reasons for that. If the health center is already connected to the grid, we're going to put in solar, but then we're going to also put in energy storage, because the grid in the countries where we work is not reliable enough to provide the electricity that is needed. In addition, a lot of times we design our systems to combine solar with diesel generators. And I know we're not for diesel generators, but if you really need to have electricity and you cannot lose it, you do need to have a backup, because sometimes there's no sunshine. Sometimes your battery storage is depleted and you need to turn on a generator as an emergency backup. And that's why we designed those hybrid systems that way. They're still saving 75 to 80% of fuel costs. So it's really positive for those health centers. When we look at O&M, I talked about this in the last session, but when we go to electrify health centers, a lot of times we're going to find a solar system that's already there. It's broken, it's not been maintained, the batteries are down. So what we're seeing is that health centers, even if they're given the CapEx for a solar system, they are not budgeting for that operation and maintenance budget. And that is critical. I said this in the last session, but a lot of people who are marketing solar say that solar is maintenance free, and it's simply not true. Solar panels need to be cleaned. You need to get all the dust off of them so that they have the maximum efficiency. Batteries will need to be changed, whether they're lead acid or lithium ion. It depends on the time. There can be part replacement. There has to be spare parts. So there needs to be capacity building on the local level to make sure that these systems can be maintained, and there has to be a budget put in place for that. Operation and maintenance should be happening at least biannually regularly, And there has to be a local company there on the ground that if there is a system issue can respond within 24 to 48 hours. Yeah, so that's kind of the highlights that I have from technology and O&M. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Laura. That's very interesting. I mean, one of the things that you're basically saying is that what I found most interesting was the fact that you try and build a grid, which is sort of a semi-autonomous grid in itself, grid assets, which can then link up to the larger grid for continuity of services, which is what resilience is all about, which is the point of also looking at solarization of health to give access and have redundancy. So thank you so much. Now I'm going to go to Mr. Saurabh Gupta, partner at KPMG. So it was an excellent presentation by your team colleague. And from there, I mean, just to ask you, what procedures have been adopted in estimating the investment requirements for solar and its quantitative benefits in the healthcare sector?
I think as I suggest, as I highlighted in my presentation, we are trying to estimate. I think the first step is to estimate the number of healthcare centers. And I think if we go on the official database of health facilities, it is generally available with the Ministry of Health. For instance, I can give an example of Bangladesh and Nepal. They have an online health facility registry with detailed information on each health center in the country. The database also provides the segregation on the category of health centers, such as health house posts, primary healthcare centers, and how those are divided. In certain cases, it also provides the services that it provides and also the kind of infrastructure which is available. So a broad estimation can be done on the number of healthcare centers which are available. Then the important point is to estimate the load requirement. I think it can be estimated based on the type of services provided and equipment prevalent in these healthcare centers. To accurately arrive at the load requirement, I think site service need to be conducted to understand the operational hour of each of the equipment, the ground level situation, which can be calculated. Nevertheless, there are a number of databases available. If we have the national guidelines are there, what entails in the primary healthcare centers, if we correlate that, we can get a broad estimate on the load requirement. So once we have that, I think we can design in terms of what would be the best technology and what could be the package, whether you need a mix of solar or battery, how you can do a sizing on that depending upon the load and the hours of operation. So all of these consideration goes in understanding the total system size for solarization. And I think once we have that, the what we are also trying to do is to do an investment assessment, what kind of investments would be required, and then how we can estimate the business case around that. So once the business case is established, I think as Mr. Hande also pointed out, now it's time to action. Everybody understands the benefits of solarization which can happen. And I think just to complete and just to answer your query on the quantitative benefits, I think if we divide, I think there are two parts to it. One, there's the avoided cost of power generation. I think if I look at purely from an electricity point of view, but there are more benefits if I look at from the healthcare point of view, because reliability is the most important aspect. And once we have the reliability, we have the quality power and a 24/7 power, we can also increase the use of the equipments which are already there in the healthcare center. So it increases the utilization. With the same level of equipments, I can serve more customers, or at least the design intended customers when we created those healthcare facilities. So I think in all, if we combine all of these things, there are significant benefits of going in and for solarization of the healthcare facilities. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Again, I'm very sorry. I could hear Harish very clearly, but both for Pradeep and you, there's so much background noise that I didn't catch. But essentially, I mean, I in the last part, I heard that if you were to look at benefits, it's not just quantitative benefits, not just about the investment and the return on investment, but the reliability of service is a key benefit that comes in. And then you have a wider customer base and user access that comes through with solarization and solutions. I trust I got that right. So in the sense of taking this forward, if I were to extend it further, I mean, what are the maybe top 2, 3 business model approaches? I know they'll be contextual to solarization for healthcare systems.
I think it's important that I think that there are a number of business models which exist. I think it is important to sort of break this down into key actors which goes into a business model. So first, I would say the nodal agencies. I think the driver of that initiative is most important. Traditionally, what we have seen in solarization initiatives, it has been taken up on a smaller scale by NGOs. Then there are initiatives of the local government bodies, communities, or standalone hospitals. However, now in terms of systematically promote, accelerate at the level which is required, I think it is important that agencies such as Ministry of Health or Ministry of Power come together in these different countries to promote solarization drive of the healthcare centers, which is the most important thing. And we have seen that this is coming through in pockets on large scale in countries like India, where I think in one of the states in Chhattisgarh, I think Chhattisgarh Health Mission undertook installation of solar systems in the state, and over 900 health centers have been solarized. Similarly, UNDP, along with the government of Zimbabwe, has undertaken significant initiative in that respect. And the second important aspect, apart from nodal agency, the key driver is the implementation agency. I think, again, I mean, the private sector needs to be roped in. There are a lot of models with respect to CAPEX, OPEX, wherein the initial CAPEX is being borne by the government. And then we have the private player maintaining providing the OPEX and maintaining the system over the life. It is also important to now look at more innovative, newer models where we can think of IPP-based model, tariff-based models, so that larger private sector investments can come in. And I think, as Mr. Hande has pointed out, the investment is not a challenge. We need to create those structures. Aggregator kind of models can be used so that we aggregate demand at a larger scale, and those multiplier impacts can be achieved. And the last, I think, the funding and technical know-how. I think the role of agencies such as ISA, multilateral organizations like ADB, World Bank, this becomes really important. And through their support, through their not only the funding support, but also through their technical know-how, they can complement the efforts of the government. They can actually convince the government to move toward the solarization drive. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. That's interesting. So you give us a range of examples and of how it's been done and what needs to be done, and the role that even a multilateral bodies can also play in extending this work and scaling up solarization to generate access and provide energy solutions. So, I mean, I know I'm going to go off script now, and I'm going to ask you, I mean, not you, but to the panel, we heard of, drawing from this business model, a different variety of business models. We heard from Laura about the different ways in which it's being implemented in different countries in Africa for particular contexts. We heard for that very evocative call for action that, we know that this can be done. Let's get it done from Harish. So therefore, I mean, probably a question for Pradeep. What needs to be done to keep pace? How do regulatory frameworks and governments keep pace with this and create an enabling environment for solarization of health services to be delivered? I mean, what would be the 2 things or 3 things that governments need to do?
Thanks very much. I think the first step is for governments to make a decision. And unfortunately, if I'm the Minister of Finance or Minister of Electricity, I'm not looking at health as my first place to be putting my investments. It goes into other areas. It's when you're looking at it from a Minister of Electricity perspective, you're not looking at sectors, because then someone else is going to ask you. I think what we really do need, and this is where I think we have the technology solutions, we have the understanding, we have seen what can be done in terms of scale. What is really needed is not so much the regulatory part. What we really need to be doing is to take these models and replicate it and do it on a pace and scale that is needed and that is possible. I think where the disconnect exists is between the Ministries of Health and the Ministries of Electricity. And that is where ISA could play a major role and bring those two together. at least in a few countries where it is imperative that we do it. Number two, the experience of doing it on scale and looking at the cost of it and bringing that blended solutions that is needed for financing. That is where people like Mr. Hande and others who have done this will be critical to bring and work with some of these countries in creating those models. Number three, I think it's really interesting at the end of COP or end of G20, any of these initiatives, we are not putting sufficient resources. I would really call for a global fund for solarization of healthcare. How do we do that? That's the kind of commitment that we need. That's the kind of resources that we need if we have to do this on scale. Otherwise, it's going to be left to companies and left to different initiatives within countries, with NGOs, with small companies. That is not going to get us to the speed and scale that we need. So if I have one message, that is to do it now, but also make sure that we put pressure on governments and all the funding agencies to put a global fund for solarization of healthcare. I think we have seen it is not that it is new, we have seen the need for it, and that the emergency need of that has been highlighted by COVID. So I think now is the time.
Great, thank you. That's interesting. Another call for action there, fund for solarization of healthcare. I'm going to close this by going back to Harish. You made that call. We hope you'll be back at COP28. So all the best with the 5,000. But what do you expect the other stakeholders involved in this business? What are the things that they need to do so that they are back at COP28 next year?
Couple of things. One is, interestingly, what happened was we didn't go to the Ministry of Energies. We only went to the Ministry of Health. And said, you're spending on diesel and diesel generators. When you're buying diesel and diesel generators, you don't go to Ministry of Energy or electricity. Then why for solar are you going to Ministry of Energy? So good part was in India, we went to Rajesh Bhushan, who is the health secretary. He said, don't go to Ministry of Energy. It's our input. Because moment Ministry of Energy puts it, the Ministry of Health blames Ministry of Energy when the system don't work. When Ministry of Health themselves buy the National Health Mission, then there's a sense of ownership that comes in. So my question would be, let's focus on the Ministry of Health and leave the Ministry of Energy alone. And that's been one of our biggest successes in Meghalaya, Manipur, Assam, Mizoram, and in Karnataka. The biggest stakeholder, there are two big stakeholders. One is what happens is, when I design solar for a baby warmer, autoclave, or an X-ray machine, people blame solar to be expensive and nobody says the autoclave, baby warmer are actually super inefficient. The stakeholders like GE, Philips, everybody has to make sure that their appliances are efficient. And so once you make that efficiently, and second, many of these countries, including India, for example, in Meghalaya, they're building up new public health centers. Can we get in the redesign thinking process where daylighting, the airflow, the architectural, not like matchboxes. So basically, Government of Meghalaya brought us in as Selco Foundation to redesign 64 health centers, leading to 30% less energy. So building efficiency, equipment efficiency, energy health audit together. It's not an energy audit and a health audit. Energy health audit together should happen. Then the implementation and the last part is creating a robust after sales maintenance. Is what happens if the government fails, like in Somalia or elsewhere? What happens if the company who supplied it collapses or is based out of Belgium? What is your third? Do we create escrow accounts for maintenance of these? And that's what in India, we call it the PIP, Program Implementation Plan of Government of India, where they allocate health budgets for health. In some states, we have added a line for solar maintenance. They have a line for diesel. We added a solar maintenance line. So the public health center at the last mile is actually able to allocate resources to maintain the solar. So there are a lot of learnings here that ISA could bridge the gap of using India as an R&D hub. And like, for example, Mizoram has a similar cost structure to Somalia. Meghalaya is a similar structure to Tanzania. Assam is very equal to Ethiopia. ISA could utilize this as an R&D center for creating the different models for PHC, CHC, wellness center, and even if you extend it to the Anganwadis, which is also the extension of the health work, we could actually make it actually robot. So the first stakeholder is the companies. How do we push companies? Building design, Ministry of Health, and the state organizations. ISA being a critical role in making this as a R&D center for rest of the world.
Great, thank you so much. I want to thank all the panelists for joining us, for your insightful thoughts from your experiences of how solarization is being achieved in the healthcare sector. What is, essentially coming out is that we have it all there. It's time to accelerate action. Let's work on the solution. Let's collaborate, refocus our energies, look at where the maximum leverage can be generated through focusing with the ministries of health, diversifying our engagements across the government bodies. The regulatory frameworks are there. ISA has a platform, or provides a platform where you can bring it all together and disseminate, replicate, learn, and continue to partner and accelerate for action. Do it, do it, do it. So thank you so much. I am going to hand back to Mr. Malbronk to close out the session. Thank you so much. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you for having moderated this session. I think it was really important to cover the broad aspect and then go into more detail. And I appreciated the experience of the one who has been managing project in the field with their feedback. I think we still have to raise awareness about all these possibilities, capabilities of solar. And yes, ISA will still remain the platform to help, to support by training, by organizing capacity building, and especially liaising among stakeholders. I think it is true in the health sector, but it's equally important in all sectors. You know, when we deal with agriculture, it's energy and agriculture. In transportation, it's energy and transportation. And here we have to make this known in the health sector that solar has the solution to many aspects. And we have to yes, taking into account this versatility and this modularity to answer most of the needs we can encounter. So with that, I'm really happy to close. No, maybe, yes. I think it's important to give the floor to the audience. So if you want to have a question yes, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Ibenete Sylvester. I'm from Nigeria. I listened keenly on your presentation and I was impressed. But my concern is Nigeria is a party, my country is a party, and you mentioned the number of activities you've had in different countries, and I didn't hear Nigeria mentioned. So I was wondering, because when I came in earlier, I made inquiries regarding the focal point, and I was told who's the focal point for Nigeria, and I was wondering what could be the reason for Nigeria not being mentioned in the countries you have activities in, and if there is something they've not been doing well, we will be glad to know. We are a team here, and we'll be glad to know because we are interested in these ISA activities. Thank you.
Maybe I can partially reply. You know, it's very solar. The needs are very huge. I would say it's very demanding to be active in the power sector, grid-connected power sector, in the off-grid sector. And then going into the detail into the agricultural sector, into the health sector, into the education. You could solarize the schools, and it's another topic important. Solarization of the transportation sector, solarization of the industrial sector. So we have plenty of things to cover. And clearly, yes, ISA cannot answer all these needs. So I would say in Nigeria, you are telling me there's nothing happening on health center. I can, yes, I will agree. But I can say we are some project and support in cold chains. So it doesn't, in cold chains, you know, cooling for preserving fruits and vegetables and so on. But I will say that we are going to take your contact detail and come back to you with, you know, discussing with your national focal point, what could be the opportunities, what could be your priorities in this healthcare sector. Yes, two more questions.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Kamil Uzeno from Nigeria also. I have actually listened to the presentations, and based on my understanding, you are keenly interested in solarization of primary healthcare centers. But actually, we are coming from a different sector entirely, which is generally focusing on climate resilience. Currently, the Nigerian government has signed with World Bank to implement 700 million USD agro-climatic resilient in semi-arid landscape project. And with the solarization, actually, we are advocating for climate smart agriculture, whereby we need solar for irrigation schemes. So I would like to know, how do you support this baby project to achieve that? Because it's part of what we are advocating for, to ensure that lack of use of generators and what have you, to use solar solely for irrigation. Solar in offices, currently all our offices, we don't use generator. We all have solar. Solar has been approved for all the 19 states. So the project is going to be implemented in the 19 other states plus the federal capital. So I would like to know, how do we partner to see that we really, the country really benefit being a member of this strategy. Also on the health sector, as you said, the cool chain, aside cool chain, there are other ways also to support health sector. For example, there is this project, Millennium Villages Project, which was piloted in, I think, 15 African countries to test the possibility of achieving Millennium Development Goals. I happen to be the e-health manager for the Nigerian side in Pampaida. What we did there is, there is the hospital was powered, it was used solar powered, and we also use solar power to charge our mobile phones. We have community health care who go for home visit. So they will go with their mobile phone, with the solar charger, do their home visit. The project is targeting women and children under 5. So this is a very good initiative, but the issue now is access. The access to solar facilities is very costly in my country. So how do we ensure that we provide ways and means to have affordable solar facilities? Because the sustainability relied on people have access to. As it is now, the access is not all that easier. Thank you. So how do we partner? How does our project partner with the ISO? Not only the healthcare sector, because we are targeting 19 northern states, and we have seen how the issue of flooding and what have you has affected the desertification and all those. So with solarization, actually, we will reduce the climate effect in our environment. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I would say Isaac cannot answer everything. You know, I would say first, in a country, in any of your country, you have to ask to contact your national focal point, who is our contact person. And then what will happen? You will help him in defining priorities in your country. So it could be priorities on various sectors. It could be health, education, transportation, power sector, or whatever. And priorities regarding activities. Training is very important usually, but it could be as well testing, setting up expertise center, helping entrepreneurship and developing innovation, etc., etc. So with each country, we need to know where the priorities are. And then we can review, and through my colleagues, you have some Isaac colleagues here, we can help you in designing a future project to help, so not on everything at the same time, but in a staggered approach, we will address some of your concerns gradually. We are also learning ourselves, so we are growing in capacities, learning from experience, and we will gradually help you. But first, you have to contact your national focal point and come up with proposal of the action and the priorities to be set up for your country. You had
Allô? Allô?
Yes.
Je m'appelle Maman Mansour. Allô? J'aimerais intervenir en français si ça ne gêne pas. Okay, I would like to ask you which approach ISA can do or can make possible to make participate the private in electrification of health center. Because most of our country, they don't even get a tarification for this kind of electrification. So which approach can you explain us to make participate the private sector?
You raise a very important question. I don't know if you would like to say a few words on that. I would say that to me, integration is really key. And integration, it's integration into the local ecosystem. And it's true that the health center, usually you are inside a village or a small city, and you have additional needs. You know, it's not only this. So then you have multiple approaches. Whether you solarize only the health center, and then you have to define to reach a sustainable business model for that, or you integrate it in a whole electrification of the district or one part of the village, and then you may go with you may design what we call a microgrid, something with a backup. So there are multiple approaches on that. They all depend on the local availability of skilled people for that, and of course availability of financing and affordability. Who is going to pay for that? I could give some example of, we heard about phone charging, providing some services. Why not providing, I've read sometimes, so I saw some experience of a health center selling cold bottles of, fresh drinks to make money, to be able to get an income, to pay for the operational and maintenance cost, the spare parts. So you can make some money with some excess energy. And all this is depending on the local situation. I don't know if you would like to add something.
So I think one of the biggest barriers in this is financing, right? We have the health centers, they need the solar. You might have an engineering firm that can do the work, but where is the financing for this going to come from? We hear about billions of dollars is out there for climate finance. I don't see local African companies able to access that finance. I don't know where that money is, right? It's very difficult. But there are some entities out there that can partner with like a beneficiary and provide asset-based financing over time so that a health center can pay a tariff and eventually be owning those systems. So if you can find financing partners like that to come in, so you bring the health center, you bring the technology provider, and you bring the financer. There are solutions that are out there, but it's very, very difficult for local African companies to access this finance that everybody's talking about. So, but it's possible.
And that's where I would say planning at the government level is really key. If you say I will have 10 or 100 or 1,000 center to electrify, to solarize, you have to show a planning for that in order to enable the setting up of various services, entrepreneurs to help installing and maintaining this. So planning at the government level is really critical to ensure and to show any stakeholder that it's a plan over the next 5 years, 10 years, and you have a staggered approach to address this issue. And then it creates confidence for entrepreneurs to be involved in this business. So planning is important as well, having a roadmap on that. One last question here.
Merci. Je m'appelle Keda Bala. Je suis parlementaire du CAD. Hier, j'ai eu l'opportunité d'échanger avec Monsieur Philippe. Et je constate à travers cet event, cet atelier, que j'ai des pays frères, des pays voisins, tels que le Niger, le Nigeria et le Tchad autour du lac Tchad, avons le même problème. Et cela est extrêmement intéressant, important pour moi-même. Et je me demande, est-ce que ISA ne peut pas faire en sorte que nous, les 3 pays-là, voisins, puissions travailler en synergie, échanger nos expériences et pour aller plus vite en termes de renforcement des capacités, puisque les besoins sont plus ou moins les mêmes. Est-ce que ce groupe que nous pourrions éventuellement organiser ne pourra pas nous aider à aller plus vite? C'est une question que je pose. Merci beaucoup.
La coordination est vraiment un aspect important de l'activité de l'Alliance. coordination au sein d'un pays et puis coordination au sein d'une région. Donc, effectivement, c'est une action que l'on considère vraiment. Mais néanmoins, il faut prévoir une feuille de route au sein du pays et ensuite voir comment, au niveau régional, ces feuilles de route peuvent se coordonner pour accroître le marché et bénéficier d'un effet d'agrégation. I will switch to, I will finish in English. So yes, coordination is really important.
Alors, oui. Bonjour, donc, merci de cette présentation. Je viens du Niger. Je m'appelle Tchoufa Medaj. Donc, je suis énergéticien. Ma préoccupation est que, donc, vous avez tout à l'heure parlé de manque de synergie entre le ministère de la Santé et celui de l'énergie. Maintenant, pour les pays expérimentés, qu'est-ce qui a été fait pour imposer cette énergie, pour respecter, pour au moins travailler de main ensemble pour pouvoir résoudre ce problème de la santé? Je vous remercie.
ISA cannot solve all the issue of the health sector. We have to stick with the energy part of it. I can understand that you have many issues, but ISA can only support you on this solarization aspect. That would be my main comment. If there's no longer any question, I think we can, that was interesting. We are exactly on time. Yes, 2 minutes before the end. So if I don't see any more question and request, I will thank all of you for participating to this panel or for moderating this panel. That was quite lively, thanks to many questions and thanks to our audience. I will close this session. I will invite you to the next session starting at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Thank you, all of you, and thank you to all our presenters online. Thank you very much.